Okay, so I was kind of sitting down one day and wondering what could we do on the channel when it comes to classic DC. Now, honestly, I had a lot of different ideas when it came to classic DC stuff like, hey, you know what? Let me go ahead and do Green Lantern or Flash or even Wonder Woman. But then I realized that for some people out there, they never truly experienced the 1990s and early 2000s Superman. And the reason why I'm saying that because it was also known as the Triangle Era. Let me explain. You see, in 1991, when it came to DC Comics, they had this great idea, which was the Triangle Era, where to make sure that all the different Superman titles were connected to one another. Now, in 1991, they only had 3 different books. Now, later on, they did add other books when it came to Superman, but at first, it was only 3. The Adventures of Superman, Action Comics, and of course, Superman. Those 3 books right there, which began the whole idea of the Triangle Era. But when it came to DC, they had one goal in mind, really different goals in mind when it came to this era. And the first was to make sure all their books were connected to one another, but to also make things a tad bit easier for fans to get into. Let me explain. So when it came to DC, they said, hey, we're going to get some new fans coming into Superman books in the 1990s. At that point, again, they only had 3 books, but they wanted to make sure that if a new fan went into a comic book store, they would not be scared of the idea of getting into Superman. So for example, let's say you picked up the Adventures of Superman issue whatever, and that was just part 1 of 4 to a 4-part story arc. And the thing is, you would not have to wait till next month to get part 2, 3, or 4. Most likely, you might get part 2 and 3 that same month, thanks to the other 2 books, and part 4 by next month, to kind of tell stories at a faster pace, but also make sure that fans should not be scared to get into Superman and not have to wait that long to get a complete story. It was a cool idea, but also it gave writers the ability to kind of focus more on other characters around Clark Kent as well, to kind of give them some breathing room, because all these different titles were just telling one long story arc for Superman from 1991 all the way up to 2002. And so I kind of felt like this right here will be a good idea for us to do when it comes to our coverage over classic DC. And so now we pick up with Superman issue number 51 in 1991, the brand new beginning for this new era, well, old era now for us, in 1991, the Triangle Era. Now, this is a one-shot story arc, but it does lead into other storylines down the road when it comes to DC Comics, especially one where you have Superman teaming up with the Legion of Superheroes. And we might cut a storyline hopefully this month or possibly next month. Who knows? Either way, it all began with issue number 51 from the Superman series and introducing a brand new bad guy, Mr. Z. And so the first few pages of this storyline is really more of Superman just being Superman. It's just him right now trying to handle a situation at a nuclear plant. And of course, that plant is going into a meltdown because one of their experiments is not going the way they thought it would. And so unfortunately, it's him now trying to get everyone out there, but also make sure that the radiation inside this plant does not spread out outside the building. So for the first few pages, it's just Clark being able to get everyone out of there, also making sure that all the different types of experiments are now once again secured, but to get the heck out of there. And once he does, he makes sure he goes into space to kind of get rid of all the radiation that's on his body. And so once he does that, that's it. We move on. And for me personally, this kind of begins the whole idea of the Triangle Era after we pass this moment right here. And here's the reason why I'm saying that. Because now we jump over to the Metropolis International Airport. And of course, we do pick up with somebody arriving at the airport. And that would be Mr. Z, our mysterious bad guy. Now, once he does arrive, we do learn more about his powers here. And let me explain, because he has the ability to hypnotize other people, mind control. And matter of fact, we get an example right here, because when he does arrive, he sees a chauffeur who's currently waiting for someone known as Mr. Perez. But you have Mr. Z use his powers on the chauffeur to make him believe that he is, well, Mr. Perez, and begin the process of just driving him away from the airport. But for Mr. Z, he came to Metropolis for a very special reason. But before we're able to learn more about what is that special reason, we jump over to Cat Grant. Now, like I said earlier, when it came to DC in the Triangle era, their main goal was to make sure like all these other characters around Clark Kent get some love, get some time to shine in the world of DC Comics. And that included Cat Grant as well. Now, for Cat Grant, she does work at the Daily Planet alongside with Clark Kent and also Lois Lane. But the thing is, around this time in DC Comics, she was single, but now she had begun to date Jose Delgado. Now, for Jose, he was a character known as Gangbuster, a street-level vigilante in Metropolis. But right now, it's him just trying to be there in her corner as her boyfriend. But the problem is that the dude does not have a lot of money like her ex-husband did. And so his goal right now is to hopefully win the lottery, get a lot of money to make sure that he does not lose her at all. And really, it's kind of cool to see how DC really tried their best to make sure that all these different characters around Clark Kent get their time to shine. Because, okay, as we still focus on Jose, you have Jose walk past Mr. Z. And when it comes to Mr. Z, he does get confronted by two thugs who want to steal his cane. And the reason why, because there is a huge diamond on top of that cane. Now, you do have Mr. Z being able to easily take out both of the thugs. But one of the thugs, you have Mr. Z being able to use his powers to give that person a heart attack. And so with that person now having a heart attack, the other thug is freaking out and wants to make sure that his friend is okay. But you didn't have Jose kind of wondering what in the world is going on with that thug. Now, Mr. Z, he had already disappeared. But either way for Jose, he's kind of wondering, why is this random man having a heart attack right now? But his lotto ticket, it falls out of his pocket and it gets blown by the air into the hands of another character. And that would be Bibbo, somebody else close to Superman. Again, it's DC saying, we got to make sure all these characters get in their time to shine. And so as we jump over to the Daily Planet, we're getting into the idea of a possible new era to the Daily Planet. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you have Perry White stepping down, because after his son had died, he was really hard on every single person who was working at the Daily Planet more than usual. And he kind of realized that the reason why he was so hard on them, because he was grieving. And so he needs some time to step away so that he is able to properly grieve, but not be hard on his people. But with him being gone, somebody got to step into his place, and that will be Sam Foswell. And so now Sam will be in charge of the Daily Planet. Again, it kind of seems like a new era for the Daily Planet with the Triangle era. Now, while you have everybody meeting their new boss, you didn't have Mr. Z go out of his way to contact Superman. Now, when he does, he really does give Clark a dizzy spell, but it's him saying like, Superman, I need you to come over to the nearby museum. And so with Clark having that dizzy spell, you have everyone kind of wondering if he is okay, but you do have Clark do the usual. He plays it off, but once he's able to do that, he leaves his job to go figure out who in the world is this Mr. Z person. But once you do have Clark arrive at the museum, he's then confronted by a security guard. Now, this security guard is being mind controlled by Mr. Z, who's telling Clark, like, you need to go inside the museum and go into the theater room. And so you have Clark follow those directions. But once he does enter the room, you then have Mr. Z go ahead and play a video. Now, this video was kind of important for me at first. And the reason why I'm saying that because, okay, when it comes to Mr. Z, he's showing Clark this video, right? And this video is from World War II, a train wreck that happened back in the war. But it's Mr. Z saying, like, you were there in the past and you had caused that train wreck. Now, here's the thing. The reason why I say this was so important at first, because I believe that Mr. Z was pre-crisis, before Crisis on Infinite Earth, because he believes that he had talked our battle against Superman back in World War II. And of course, that Clark was, in the early days of DC Comics, was technically involved in that war. But this is post-crisis. This Clark right here had no business at all when it came to World War II. But again, he believes that Clark was there. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to Mr. Z, he does reappear in a different storyline down the road that kind of fills in the blank for us of why he believes that he saw Clark in the past. But once you have Mr. Z being able to sneak up on Clark, he does absorb his soul into the gym. Now, once you have Clark's soul go inside the gym, he's then being confronted by all these different historic characters from the past, like real historic characters from our world. But here's the thing. All these different people, they're human. Clark is not human. He is Kryptonian. And that right there is really important because the gem is not really able to hold him because his soul is not human. His soul is from Krypton. And so with him being Kryptonian, he was then able to break free, but also because he began to speak in his native tongue. And so once you have Clark do all of that, he breaks out of the gym and his soul is able to go back to his own body. And this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline because, okay, when it came to Clark being able to leave the gym and his soul going back into his body, it did cause the gym to somewhat explode. And it sent Mr. Z flying through a glass window where apparently he has supposedly died. And so once you have the police arrive and they take the body away over to the morgue, well, you then kind of find out that Mr. Z is not dead. He gets up and he leaves the morgue and he now takes on a new identity. And he's out there in the world once again plotting to sooner or later come after Clark Kent. Once again, really more after Superman. And so this is going to be where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.